those hits are big hits still. You know what I mean? Like you imagine, and then trying to layer to that moment to where you're like, okay, now we're playing with like ice chunks and like, what can we do to like, elevate that sound and it's just amazing. But and then to find that place where like, well, the hits shouldn't sound like kicks, and you're using the subwoofer to so you can feel the impact. That's something you didn't have back in the day.
As
So
far as the music, we had a really great time bringing it more into the room, making it bigger, making it complement the action, bringing up, like you said, that guitar when it's time, when the mood totally
yeah.
changes, and then getting out of the way so that you can hear him getting his head beat with a hubcap.
Welcome everyone to the latest episode of Zebra Spotlight. I'm super delighted to be speaking with Jess and Brandon, who both worked on the sound mix of the phenomenal hit that is The Furious, all over the world. If you've not watched it yet, you're crazy. You need to go and see it. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. Brandon, you're in Colorado at the moment, and Jess, you're in Los Angeles. So thank you both for your time. Please introduce yourselves to the world.
My name is Jess Parks. I am a re-recording mixer and sound supervisor, and I had the pleasure of working with Brandon on The Furious.
I'm Brandon Proctor, and I'm a re-recording mixer, and had an absolute blast working on the Furious with Jess. It was super fun.
Fantastic. And I'm going to ask both of your backgrounds of how you both got into the whole film industry, sound design, each of your sort of backstories. Jess, we'll start with you.
Sure. I moved to LA in like 2010, and I got a job at Bad Robot as a post coordinator, and that kicked off a lot of amazing friendships and relationships as you do when you're in your 20s and you're just giving everything you've got. And then from there, I became a post supervisor for many years and then a studio executive at Sony Pictures. And that's where I was in 2020, funny enough, before the world shut down. And I broke the news to my team that I actually wanted to be a re recording mixer. And so from there, I asked everybody that I already knew, can you show me how to do what you do? Can you show me? Because the dub stage has always been my favorite place. As a post supervisor, where you're there from edit to pulling the reels out of the poor director's hands because it's time to deliver. To go from that to spending my time in the best place in the entire filmmaking process, in my opinion, which is the dub stage. Because the thing that I hear most is tired, exhausted, spent filmmakers saying, "Oh my gosh, I made a movie. It actually sounds like a movie and it feels real." And just the tension goes, and now we're flowing and we're trading ideas and we're making this thing, taking it to the next level, adding what sound adds to it, which is the third dimension that comes off the screen. So yeah, that's my story.
Fantastic. And Brandon, let's hear yours.
Yeah, I started, out of San Francisco, SF State, San Francisco State, and was trying to figure out if I was going to move to Los Angeles, and was doing networking was different then, a little harder. I was working with like AES chapters and Grammy. I was working on a committee for the Grammys and trying to do everything I could to meet people. And so I would set up tours and stuff like that for other people. And so I knew people at Skywalker. So I was going to take a job offer in Los Angeles, but I had a girlfriend at the time and she had another year of college. And I was like, well, I should try Skywalker. They're like, I know people there. I should
Oh
maybe,
my gosh.
you know,
I should just try Skywalker. Why
I,
not?
well, that's,
The rest of
I
us
mean,
dream.
I know. I mean, that's the silly thing is, and I was like, so I was working at music studios, and I right away I kind of figured out like, music studios were not going to be the place I wanted to spend all my time in sound. I loved music and stuff, but it just felt like the road I didn't want to be a part of
Mhm.
all of a sudden. And I felt like I learned that pretty quickly. And film was another thing. I loved sound for film and music. I love both. So I did. I called somebody at Skywalker, and like just as luck would have it, I was working there a week later. Um,
Wow.
I mean, it's super, and especially then and now, there's not a lot of turnover. So they were looking for somebody in the machine room, and I had just enough knowledge about tape and how to, align tape machines, and I knew consoles from the music industry, but I was super green. Didn't I knew that I didn't know a lot. I knew enough to be dangerous, kind of thing. And I was there working a week later, and like literally like amazing dream. And like, you're being introduced and walked around, and like literally like it's Gary Reichstrom going like, "Hey, Brandon, nice to meet you. Like let me know if you have any questions or if there's anything you ever need." And I'm like, it's kind of like it's just such an incredible community, the people there. It's like a family, and they just really take care of everybody that comes there. And yeah, I mean, it's silly. Like everybody talks. I just happen to live in the Bay Area where, Skywalker was. So that's why I was like, I guess I should try it there, because I knew I used to do like journalism for somebody in San Francisco, and Paul Stubblebine was an engineer for music and stuff in San Francisco, and he had a column he'd write about stuff that happened in like music studios and film studios, and this is part of my networking. I would go around and call the studios and learn what they were doing so I could tell him what they were doing, and he'd write the column. But it was just another way of me. There was no social media, really wasn't a thing.
Hmm.
So this is the 90s. So it was a way for me to actually like contact people and get to know. I was just that 20-year-old some kid, that nobody knew anything about, and they only knew that I was just gathering information, but I had contacts because of that. So this is kind of a part of that whole global, like, how do I meet people? And
Wow.
so yeah, I was lucky enough to get that job, and if I didn't get that job, I don't know, it would have been years. I mean, I'm trying to think of the next person we hired. It was,
Hmm. Hmm.
well, Juan Peralta, who is another incredible re-recording mixer, he started at the same time as me. So we started within 2 months of each other there. And, I worked in the machine room. I slung mag and tweaked the dubbers at that time, but it was just the changeover to like the digital media, and they were starting to use like MMR8s and, all these different, we had Pro Tools, and we had studio frames and all these things, and starting to get digital consoles, but we had a lot of analog consoles, and it was quite an education to just drop into that. And for the next 10 years, it just was kind of the wild west of the digital age. I felt
Hmm.
like because it was changing so much, and same with the way films are being mixed and designed, and the just the people I got to be in the room with while they worked. You got to hear how they made decisions and why they made decisions and what was important, and how they were trying to make these stories come alive as much as possible, and how they dealt with clients.
Hmm.
That was probably one of the highest, biggest things I learned is how these sound professionals would work with these directors and producers and picture editors, composers, and how they would bring their film to life. It was an amazing education. So incredibly lucky, to be there. And from there, just trying to scrape my way into like mixing every indie I could find. I actually taught myself Pro Tools at Skywalker at night because we didn't
Nice.
have it in my college yet. So I would stay late, and I got a couple little like animation shorts. I think the director was Scott Boganowski, and he worked at ILM, and he had these little shorts he was working on. So I would take those, and I would just painfully stay all hours of the night, just like what is this? Oh, that I need to make a cut. How do I make a cut? And how do I like literally? That's. And then the next day, like whoever I was mix teching for or assisting, I would like ask them questions like, I was trying to do this, and like, oh, you do that? Okay, great. Um, so really, really just, learning how to use everything. And of course, now that's all we're doing is Pro Tools, and I'm, using all kinds of weird keys and making it my own way. But yeah, so, and then just mixing movies, and here we are in the Furious.
And just as they're nodding, that sounds like a very familiar story for a lot of people in the industry.
Oh, I mean, there's always the element of paying your dues. it is such a privilege to just be able to sit in the room.
Yeah.
And so when you have the opportunity to do that when you're younger, especially, you're so eager and you just want to like prove yourself and you want to have input and you want to have answers. And the truth is, you are in input mode. You need to be just listening and watching and observing what's said and what's unsaid and what's said by who, when. There's just this a dance of subtext that keeps everything flowing because we've got a hierarchy on the stage. So, yeah, I think Brandon is alluding to something that should be familiar to everyone.
Well,
Well, and it's true. I mean, it's like the music studios are a really good training ground. And I've learned everybody who comes to a music studio there, like, or restaurants, or how to deal with people. But, that idea of like, especially if you're an assistant, speak when you need to say something. There's not always, maybe it's not going to be your idea, even if you have the right idea. Maybe hold on to your cards. Maybe even give your idea to somebody else to express. At the right time. Just all those kind of like things I learned. Those little tricks of like, nobody wants to hear from you, buddy. Just keep it to yourself. But you might have a moment to actually, give that information because you might have something smart to
mhm.
say. But knowing when to say it, it was something I learned early on.
So there's a huge amount of emotional intelligence gems that you guys are giving away. So for the younger audience, take heed. These are gems of wisdom from people in the industry who are very experienced. Um, Brandon, you mentioned that when you say Skywalker Sound, I just happened to interview Sean England the other day.
Oh yeah.
So you've probably worked alongside him on a few things.
No, we did. Sean and I worked, we were back in the day together in the machine room together. Yeah, we're close. I mean, we've Sean and I have vacationed together before. So yeah,
So you didn't mention that.
but oh yeah, no,
That's for tales of another day.
oh yeah, no, Sean and I go way back.
And Jesse, when you mentioned Bad Robot, this brings me. I've got memories of watching Lost back in the day. Um, and when we go back to TV shows, I think 24 was probably a pioneer when you had these long series of episodes after an episode.
Hmm.
Um, but I remember Lost was probably one of those phenomenal TV shows that started this whole series of you just want to see character development over. I'm not talking about Dallas and Dynasty and all those are like 80s TV shows. I'm talking
Yeah.
about something immersive, cinematic. The sound design's amazing, the character development. But again, another
On cable.
phenomenal,
Yeah.
yeah, another phenomenal TV show from back in those days.
Yeah, it's funny because that show came out and Cloverfield both came out well before Bad Robot had been something that I'm a prospect, a work prospect. So I had that moment of having being able to remember these great experiences watching these movies or TV shows with my friends
Hmm.
and then to be in the building where it's made. That just feels it feels like a miniature accomplishment. And oh my gosh, it surely didn't disappoint.
And now let's focus on the Furious. So this it got very famous after it aired at the Toronto Film Festival, world acclaim. Now, how did you guys get hold of working on that on the sound mix? So tell us the story of that.
Sure. So that came through me. And the reason that Bad Robot is relevant is because that is the era of my life where I made friends with Chris Tonick, who is now a prolific editor and was the editor on The Furious. So when they finished their sound mix and it got so much amazing attention, uh, their one note consistently was that it was mixed to be acceptable to an Asian audience where it was originally mixed, but that all of the American studios who wanted to do distribution wanted to bring it up to a more American standard of sound design and dialogue smoothness and sync and a number of things that they're much more forgiving with a smaller audience overseas. So that was our task. We took over the great work that they had already done on a very tight budget and tight timeline And then we took it the extra 10-20% to bring it into the room, to make it hit harder, to make to make the dialogue really smooth and sound natural so it doesn't pull you out of the story. Little things that you won't notice. But if you were to watch one and then the other, you would certainly feel the difference.
It's like bringing Police Story into the world of John Wick.
Oh my gosh, it's so good.
And there were actually, I believe, two different crews before us. Even like I think it was actually right in China. There was like two crews, and I don't think either crew had been given that much time either.
Mm-mm.
It was their budget was. I mean, they did a lot of incredible work. It just needed to be honed and tightened up and cleaned up, and you know, and Jess, you should talk about the dialogue too because there was so much that had to be, kind of redone, but it
Mm.
was always English. So, you've got this history of, dubbed, like martial art films, from the past. But this was always going to be English. It was actually shot that way. But part of it also was to be able to understand English was not the first language of everybody being filmed. You want to talk about that, Jess? Because I think
Of
there's some
course.
stuff there.
Yeah. So you're right. English was not the first language of a lot of people being filmed, meaning many of our actors are speaking their third language.
Yeah,
As
totally.
somebody who has one language, I respect that. So there's certainly nothing, no bad mark for not being a perfect American English pronouncer. The audiences, though, commented that they were missing some story because they couldn't understand some lines. And sometimes when you need to clarify a line and we don't and the original actor's accent was the difficulty. We worked with Kenji, the director, and Ranjani and Wendy, who have a great, well, they do ADR, automated dialogue replacement. They do Loop Group, where they source voice actors for movies and for various reasons, and they do voice matching. So basically, I'd sent them the lines from the original actor, and I said, "Could you please ask of your stable of talent, does anyone sound like this woman?" And if so, could we? And a lot of the times, the reason we did that is so that we could preserve the original actor when we could, because we do want to keep that performance. And they were good actors. It was not the performance that was struggling for the most part. It was just the pronunciation. And we want to keep as much of that authenticity as we can. So we did quite a bit of ADR, and quite a bit of ADR matching. And I think it went really well. Kenji was a dream to work with. He was up at all hours of the night where he was to supervise these ADR sessions. So he's on the phone and he's listening to different performances. But it was a really wonderful opportunity to bring this movie up to what he had wanted it to
Hmm.
be.
Hmm.
And, this experience is so common where filmmakers, you do have only so much budget and you do your best to plan for it. And sometimes when you get to that stage where you're like, all right, we've only got this much, just mix it. Let's just see. Sometimes it doesn't go as you get as much as you have time for. And unfortunately, that means that we probably got more time than the original mixers did. And because of the combination, the result is really bombastic. It's a great, super fun, non-stop movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But you should also talk to Brandon about the sound design and the sound effects because this isn't his first rodeo in martial arts movies.
I've got to say I mean the sound design. I'm just pattering of feet and then flip flops coming off, and the pattering of bare feet
Hmm.
and clanging and it's. Try not to swear, but it completely messes with your head when it's just a visceral explosion of just audio manicness. It's wonderful.
I
Give
know.
us a bit more insight as to how you guys achieve this because it's wonderful to hear.
Yeah, well, in a lot of those sounds, those were there. It was just kind of like clearing away for it, and I keep using the word like hone, but like removing things that would kind of get in the way. There were so many incredible sound elements and design that they had already made, but it would be like that moment, like you're saying, like when he's in the flip flops and takes them off and he's barefoot, and just running for it. I mean, like. it's all about like just making sure you hear that. That's a storyline. You want to make sure you hear that moment, and because it's so like um, incredible how he just like running through the streets barefoot. You know what I mean? I mean, the acting was just mind-boggling. And it reminds me of like I mixed the Raid 2 and designed that movie. And it has those elements of the Raid where it's just nonstop and just no, I mean, they're like superheroes, you know what I mean? But they without wearing capes and masks and stuff, it's phenomenal. But getting through all that sound and making sure that anything isn't out of place, but and making ways so you can actually hear those footsteps get to the next thing. And what's the most important part of that fight you want to hear? What's the cool sounds? Because sometimes you get like too many sounds, and it's masking the cool sounds. You want to make sure you can, and there was so much to dive into that the teams, and I think because there were two teams, there was a lot of stuff in there. I think there was even different, workstations they worked in. I think, one was in like maybe Nuendo and one might have been in Pro Tools or something else. And so all had to be brought into Pro Tools and kind of gone through and kind of just tweaked and EQ'd and kind of, mellowed out at times. It was definitely a feat, and then just trying to use every speaker in our arsenal as well to try to really fill the room as much as possible.
And also the blend of how the music was blended into the film. So there wasn't anything which is overarching. Sometimes you can, in some productions, that the music is the story.
Right.
But in this, it was just very, very subtly done. The music was majestic where it needed to be and set the scene in certain, for instance, the end fight scene where the guitar starts playing. It's part of the theater, but it's not overwhelming. It's very, very cleverly interlaced with the film.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it was incredibly fun to work with. I mean, it felt like because we were brought in after like others sounded it's funny. It's kind of like I mean, we worked on it for a little bit, but like, you're getting to watch it and be a part of it and create and with the sound. I mean, it was such a like fun, you know, mix to be a part of it because of that, because we're learning what other people had already done. And then so you've kind of got the archaeology of going through, the things that they've made and where they're at and, one sound crew, what they were thinking about, and another sound crew and what they were thinking about, and then how to maybe like, go through that and blend their sounds or maybe just at times remove sounds because they're it's too much, you know what I mean, just again keeping track of like what's the most important thing to hear and how do we pan it into the room and feel that spatial energy, how to blend it with the music, because there was so much. I'm going to trade the location here. There was just so much to go through, as you can imagine, with all those fights.
And I want to ask you both, if we just think about the evolution of the martial arts film, where particularly sound has been integral for all martial arts films, through history. Just because I'm thinking back to Shaw Brothers films, to the classic old school Jackie Chan, Snake and the Eagle's Shadow, Drunken Master, all of that evolution, then into the 80s of Tiger Cage and Tiger Cage 2, Police Story era.
Hmm.
And then coming through all of that, where it's all this sort of the crashes, the wallops, and the whoosh, and this, that, and the other, to the modern day action flick. And I'm thinking, whether it's a film with Tom Hardy or Gangs of London or something, where things have to just sound a bit more real, but still have the same, if not a lot more impact and crunch.
Hmm.
What has been the some of the techniques that maybe they used to use back in the day to what do we do now, and how has that evolution happened so that we're feeling these a lot differently compared to the drama that existed 20, 30 years ago?
Well, it's funny. I think a lot of that. Can you hear me okay? Because I changed
Hmm.
location. Okay, good. Thanks.
Lovely
Um,
sunshine.
the other room might sound like it was about to get noisy, so I wanted to clear out. it's funny because I think the techniques are similar, but but at this, like using over microphones to get the whooshes because there's plenty of whooshes. Like every hit, you have whooshes, and you have a hit, and you have like different types of hits. But I think now, in our Pro Tools sessions, we can go so deep with the track layering, and how many things you can go through to make a punch or a kick or a hit. But at the same time, you want to make sure, there's kind of a thing. It's funny, like I remember on the Raid 2, that we went through, and there was a whole idea about Raid 1 and Raid 2, and Gareth wanted to like, I want everything to be as real as possible. And I didn't work on Raid 1, but my first thought was like, oh, well, shouldn't we try to make it sound like the language of Raid 1 so it has that same feeling? He's like, no, I really want it to be natural. I'm like, well, movie natural or what kind of natural, And once we got into the mix, we kind of learned that no, we wanted to make it sound like a version of the Raid 1. We want that same kind of gun and hit that we had in that. There is a language that we need to get back. And so we did that while we're mixing. We're kind of like layering a lot of those same kind of sounds so they had that same kind of language because there is a language to it. You know, when you're making a punch or kick, you need to have that whoosh sound, And there are new whooshes that we use, and I think back in the day you might only have so many whooshes, you know what I mean? So you hear these repetitive sounds, from repetitive, footsteps, right, and repetitive like hits and kicks, and now it's gotten more natural to where like somebody might have gone through and done the whole Foley track, so the feet are more natural sounding, and maybe it's a combination of having those natural feet, but at the same time those hits are big hits still. You know what I mean? Like you imagine, and then trying to layer to that moment to where you're like, okay, now we're playing with like ice chunks and like, what can we do to like, elevate that sound and it's just amazing. But and then to find that place where like, well, the hits shouldn't sound like kicks, and you're using the subwoofer to so you can feel the impact. That's something you didn't have back in the day. So there are these changes. I just came off another movie called Painter that'll come out. I think it'll come out later this year. But it's another like amazing, fight sequences and gun sequences from Gareth Evans. Not Gareth Evans. It's Raid. Garrett Warren, who's another. He was he's a martial arts expert, and so he made this film, and it's finding that line too of like not going too far, but because you always need to get to the next level, you always need to make it bigger, at some point, you know what I mean? So like if you go too big too soon, now you got nowhere to go, um
So
Jess, you want to talk about the music of that because there's so much amazing. Yeah, so Jess mixed the dialogue and music on this and did an amazing job.
Yeah,
uh
as you probably already know, that generally there's the two mixers, and the one handles the dialogue and the music, and the other the sound effects. Yeah, so that was our state of flow. As far as the music, we had a really great time bringing it more into the room, making it bigger, making it complement the action, bringing up, like you said, that guitar when it's time, when the mood totally
yeah.
changes, and then getting out of the way so that you can hear him getting his head beat with a hubcap. It really is about paying attention to what you don't realize. And I didn't even realize until I started learning the craft, because there's the technical side of it, there's the how to move the faders and how to turn the EQ, but then there's the art of it, which of course captivates my imagination. And the art of it that you don't hopefully notice is that the sound is telling you what to look at and what's actually important right there. And so I found when I started as a mixer that I'd be like, how am I supposed to cut this fight scene when all this stuff is going on? Like, it just sounds so crazy. And I was putting too much in. And, that's just an early lesson where you realize this is not reality, just like real life fight, or realism or movie realism. It's not reality. You're telling a story. And so when it comes to the flow of music, effects, and dialogue, every shot is intentional with what you are supposed to be paying attention to. And so our role is to know what that is and get it right and help it. So you may notice if you were to watch those footsteps, you may listen to when they turn up or down based on what's going on, even though he maybe nothing has changed in terms of like how close he is to the camera. But you won't have noticed because we've guided your attention to the next thing. So there is definitely a craft to that that is a never-ending journey to discover what is your style, how does that flow with the director's style. Some directors, one shot, one sound. Other directors, I want it to be huge and giant. So there is a very there's a range. It's definitely a dance.
Totally.
Wow, what the incredible explanation! And I think now, I think when viewers now watch something, they're going to have a probably watch it in a different with a different lens now. Think, okay,
Yeah.
let's pay attention to the. But you're absolutely correct because that's what captivates you. That's what captures the emotion, and that's what keeps you engaged. It always comes back to what you hear and what you don't hear. Um,
Right.
wow. So gone are the
And you
tolls. I
you
was
think
going to
about
say
too that the picture changes a lot from what it used to be. The cuts and how fast. I'm sorry. That's another thing to think about. Like, there's so many more edits now in these fight sequences than there used to be.
Mm.
It's kind of amazing. Anyways, sorry.
no, you're absolutely right. If I try and show the old Shaw Brothers stuff to my kids now, it's like this is just like watching ballet or a dance or something. It's not visceral. It's not fast enough. There's no punching. It's everything's choreographed perfectly well, and everyone's in sync. And you want to see organized chaos,
Yes.
and
Yes.
and
And that
because
Totally.
word
that feels
visceral
real. Yeah,
is only a sound word, right?
true,
Sound is the
true,
only thing that reaches out into your body.
true.
So it is important how we deploy that.
Absolutely. So yeah, instead of towels and slapping meat and watermelons, things have moved on. Wow. And just talking about the film in general for fans of other genres of stuff, there's certain elements in the film where I was thinking, okay, that's taken from The Terminator. This bit is taken from Hard Boiled and The Killer, classic John Woo films. There's some, if anyone have seen any of those stuff from the 80s and 90s, there's some wonderful tributes to films which have gone by, um,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
which was what incredible. And I'd like you both to, yes, Jess, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to toss this out there. You may not have noticed it's not a sound thing, but there are actually three different martial arts styles represented by the different fighters in the movie that all come together at the end into this mixed martial arts like extravaganza. But that blew my mind to learn. And then suddenly I'm looking at the difference in the style, and you can tell. It's really fascinating. It's great.
You're absolutely correct, and I think if people took a deeper dive and looked at the actors and what they'd been trained in,
Mm.
then you'd probably understand where the different martial arts are coming from. Everyone knows Yayan from the Raid, and from the Indonesian martial arts to the classic Wushu and Wing Chun elements from the other actors. But no, but you're absolutely right. It's incredible. And films like this are important because they get you to go away and research, find out more about the styles and the cultures and things. So, and a lot of
Absolutely.
the promo that's gone into this has been phenomenal. I wanted you to, both of you, tell me if you can share or promo any current projects or anything that we can expect to see your work in the future, upcoming months.
Jess?
For sure. For me, I finished a movie earlier this year called Drifter. Um, and that's going to be, I'm not sure what the distribution is going to be. I think it's going to be a wide release, but it's about drifting, and it's going to be, it's very big already in drifting circles. So there's this big convention in Vegas that they just screened it at, and I'm very, very excited. Another very passionate movie. Passionate filmmakers are my jam. Um, and and I make a podcast ongoing, so that's mainly
Fantastic.
my stuff right now.
And we'll put a link to your podcast so people can all subscribe and watch your podcasts.
Sure.
And Brandon, what have you got coming up?
I have a movie coming out that I actually mixed about a year and a half ago, but it's called Mayday. It'll be on Apple TV. It's a Skydance Apple movie, and it's a Ryan Reynolds and Kenneth Branagh movie. Takes place in the 80s, and it is incredible action, and it's super funny. It's like this. It's like a comedy movie that you didn't know was a comedy. It's hilarious. I mean, they know that it's a comedy, but it's so funny. It's an incredible film, but Ryan's kind of like a fighter jet lands in a Black Hawk, crashes in the Soviet Union, and meets Kenneth Branagh, and it goes from there, and it kind of like a turns into like a Spies Like Us buddy movie, and it's I don't want to even say anything more because it's just so fun.
Fantastic. That sounds very intriguing. And both of you have got quite an eclectic history in TV and film. I just wanted to, for you guys to shout out to the audience, just to remind people the sort of stuff that you've worked on, so we can celebrate together. Jess, you go ahead.
Oh, you want to know my past movies
Yeah,
that
yeah,
I've
some of
worked
the
on?
stuff that we're
Sure.
familiar with.
I delivered two of the Star Trek movies, Venom, Venom 2, Jumanji and Jumanji 2. What else? It just feels like a Girl in the Spider's Web. There have been just a swath of amazing movies. I worked for Sony Pictures, so the movies that went through that studio, some of them ended up on my desk, and those were each and every one of them so rewarding. I really enjoyed as a studio. I really enjoyed the Sony lot. But even as a freelancer in my Star Trek days, I have always really loved being a part of the crew, and that's kind of the thing I like about film. I don't have a lot of experience in TV. It might be the same, but the familial quality of the teams. The great thing, I mean, being a freelancer is so incredibly stressful, of course, but something I've always loved about it is that your teammates are at their peak, right? Because everybody's auditioning for the next job with how they're doing on this one. So I really find incredibly supportive crews of each other who have each other's back. And not because they're like, I'm afraid I won't be hired, because they are all passionate filmmakers and they respect the experience and input of their colleagues and the work that it took to get there. Everybody who's in that room worked very, very hard to get there. And so the reward is getting to make something cool together. That's always been the thing that has drawn me to both post and sound.
Fantastic. And I wonder, do you get to meet many of the actors usually during apart from, say, premieres and things, do you get to meet sort of some of the actors and
Often, more often than as a mixer, because once you're on the dubbing stage, it's kind of a little inner sanctum. They don't let a lot of extra opinions walk into the room. It unsupervised. So there is not a lot of opportunity, as much opportunity to meet actors. We're always bringing them in for ADR, so there's usually the opportunity to meet them through ADR as a post supervisor and a studio executive. Lots and lots and lots of interactions with the actors and directors to make the movie possible, both positive and negative.
right?
I once had to call a very prominent actor and director and tell them that our DI facility had lost a day of dailies.
Oh no.
That was really fun. But the truth is, the other great thing about working with professionals, yeah, there's the bad eggs, the people who are a little emotionally unintelligent and out of control. But for the most part, I really, really find such maturity among film professionals.
I'm just trying to imagine an ADR session between Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart.
Oh my gosh, it would never end. They would just banter the whole time. Have you seen them
How do you
together?
get any work?
They're like work wives.
Oh my goodness, that's hilarious. And Brandon, looking through your profile, I mean, you've worked on some incredible films as well. I mean, Sinners was just another phenomenon. But yeah, please list some of the stuff that you've worked on so the audience can get to know you a
Yeah,
bit better.
there's been some, I mean, I've been really fortunate, I mean, I can go back to like, one of my earlier films like Finding Neverland, which I absolutely loved, or Borat, All Is Lost. All Is Lost was a fun one because it's just, you're on a boat with Robert Redford with almost no dialogue, and it's like two actors, the boat and Robert, but Quiet Place 1 and 2, and Black Panther, of course, Sinners. I got to do the Predator Badlands last year,
Oh,
which was
fantastic film.
so fun to work on. Predator was such a big movie for me as a kid. So I just so was Star Wars. So like I've been so fortunate to work on some of these films. Like when I started at Skywalker back, I got to be an assistant, mixer, mix tech on like Star Wars Episode 1, 2, and 3, and it was like such a like these are my GI Joes. I was so excited to get to work on something like that. But yeah, I've been really fortunate. There's been a lot of great films and filmmakers, that I love. Midnight Special and Jeff Nichols movies in general. I love him and his films. That's the thing too, like the filmmakers, like Jeff and Dan Trachtenberg and Ryan Coogler, like they're such incredible like people, humans,
Hmm.
not just and filmmakers, but I like them, and to get to work on these are films that I would, be fans of even if I didn't work on them. You know what I mean? So it's just such, a pleasure to get to work on some of these things where it's like that's a it's yeah, it's exciting.
And just any titles of either TV shows either you've seen recently or films that you really caught your eye, or old classics that you can watch, every single day if you could. Jess, what sort of stuff have you loved or have you enjoyed?
Every single day. I I'm a story girl. So in terms of stuff that I haven't worked on that I really love, it tends to be along the stranger side of of the story spectrum. The other night, my husband came home from something around 10:30, and I was in the middle of Midsummer, my second viewing. He's like, "What is wrong with you?" But there's just and the sound in that movie also incredibly effective,
So
incredibly
great.
effective.
Yeah, I love it.
So I love that stuff. Nothing stands out other than that recently,
Hmm.
but we have so many incredibly talented professionals in the industry that it stands out more to me now when a movie sounds mediocre than when it sounds amazing. And truth be told, every time I watch, you should definitely get Brandon and Will to talk to you about Predator Badlands because A, that was incredible,
Hmm.
Brandon. I loved it,
Thank you.
beginning to end, and the everything about it, the soundscape especially. But everything Will Files does is great. For me, I really his taste is right on with mine, and every time I'm like, wow, that sounded good. Let me see who did that. I'm like, "Ugh, it's Will again, So yeah, he's got the goods. He knows what he's doing.
And Chris Terhune,
Sure, yeah,
Chris did so much. I mean, he was my partner on Badlands, and such incredible work. They're doing a movie right now called Wellfall that I'm excited to see,
that's awesome.
and I'm sure it's going to sound amazing because most of it takes place inside the whale, you know.
I'm so
Um,
excited.
so, I mean, you can only imagine what that's going to be like, right? So that's going to be amazing. I just saw Toy Story 5.
Hmm.
I took my kids, they're 4 and 7, and such, I thought it looked visually amazing, sounded amazing. I mean, those movies always sound good, but Ren Klyce is such an amazing sound designer and mixer. He just his taste is just phenomenal, yeah, yeah, it just and I keep seeing things about like Heat 2 coming, they're going to start filming this year. Like, what's that movie going to sound like? It's going to be incredible. I don't know who's going to work on that, but whoever's going to do it, it's going to, a lot of, that first one was so kind of kind of awesome in its way, like because it's speaking of a lot of things that were done on set. A lot of those guns, they're kind of awesome, but they're also just different guns, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
Hmm.
they have such a different like color to them because of that. But what else have I seen recently? I still haven't seen Obsession, Dynasty Obsession, and Backrooms, but I'm also really curious to hear those movies.
Hmm.
Same.
Have you seen those? I still am dying to see those.
No.
Um, what else have I seen recently that you know, uh, I just went back because there's a To Catch a Thief there's a clip of it in this movie Painter that I'm just finished a week ago, and an incredible, really, really. In fact, I think you'll if you love The Furious, you'll love Painter. It's Walt Goggins is in it, and Amber Midthunder. Amber was in Predator Prey.
Hmm. Hmm.
She's
Again,
a bad.
excellent film.
She's just a badass, and she is in this movie too. And incredible action. And speaking of heat, there's a scene in there that there's an incredible gunfight
Yeah.
in Painter. But the team on that movie was incredible. But the I lost my train of thought that was taking me somewhere. Um, I totally lost my train. Anyways, I end up
And then
talking about a movie
any
that.
classics that you.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's what it was. Well, there's a To Catch a Thief is in there, and so
Hmm.
I started watching To Catch a Thief, and now I'm like on a Hitchcock then. But speaking of like just clear and clean and interesting, what a you know, he did so much with sound. What I mean, when you think of like birds and the electronic score stuff with that, like it's all birds and stuff. Just amazing. Things and it really, I know that they did things differently back then, but just the difference of like when the gun cocks and then you hear the music kick in and then just it how specific it is. Um, Sonically really, really awesome and interesting. Anyway, so I'm kind of it put me on a little Hitchcock bend, so I'm
Hmm.
going
Hmm.
back and watching more Hitchcock film. Oh, which I've seen them all. I just love them,
Hmm.
but I'm going back and do. I love kind of just ca you know catching on to a director and then just like deep diving with the
Hmm.
filmmakers, like, okay, what do they do next? And then just kind of like do my own little history lessons with filmmakers. So right now I'm doing a Hitchcock thing.
Fantastic. And before I let you go, there's one thing that I've never really asked anyone before, and I've just literally just thought of it. When you're in the sound mix and you're in the editing room and you're watching the material, and obviously you're seeing the film before it actually comes out. Then when you actually watch the film, does it ruin your overall experience, or do you still get the same amazing experience that we, the audience, have who've never seen it before? Because you work on such fantastic films.
I need to
Do you
take
get?
some time off of it and
Hmm.
then I can start feeling again. But I also start feeling like, here like we were doing a bake off where the bake off is where they play like 10 movies that have, sound that people love throughout the year. And they play them back to back in the same theater. And there's like a 10-minute clip of each movie. And,
Right.
uh, and Sinners was one of those. And I just kept going like, oh yeah, there's that note I didn't do. And oh, I still wanted to do that. And
Oh
oh wait, it
no.
was like, Death by a Thousand Cuts. And people were like, oh, that sounded really great, Brad. Like I have tons of notes, but okay, you know.
Always.
So sometimes, it just depends. You just start going and like, I have so many notes I wanted to, you're just never done. So sometimes it's that. But, you know, um, if I have a little time away, then I can enjoy the movie again.
And just what about your experience? Does it affect how you enjoy the production?
I'm a little different from that. Usually, when we're watching the first cut, be it the
Hmm.
director's cut or some version of a mid edit, um, I am listening to what they've put in, like what the choices the editor has already made. If it is an artistic one, I might ask about that. So we do a thing when we start as a sound supervisor. When you start the process, the first thing you do is you watch the movie with the filmmakers. It's called a spotting session,
Right.
and while you're doing that, you are stopping the movie and you're saying, okay, this scene right here where the camera makes this crazy angle, do you have any sound design in mind? Maybe it's just silent. They just put it in there. There's nothing there yet. You discuss the concepts that they want. And so what I end up with is a combo as I'm watching it of input what they want, but also they hired me for a reason. So I'm not sitting there just taking orders like a server. I'm contributing. I'm looking at a moment and I'm stopping and I might say, what do you think of this here? Or, if I tried this, do you think it would get this point a lot across? Or, there are things that they don't even know how to achieve what they want. So I have to also be tuned into the emotional journey of their film and be volunteering little moments to enhance that and see what they respond to. So when I do the first watch of a movie, I'm imagining a final version. I'm filling in a lot with my imagination in terms of the soundscape, as probably, by the way, you probably would. Anyone who watches something that's, feels a little incomplete, you can fill it in. On the dubbing stage, rarely do I get tired of it. Yes, part of the process is watching reels over and over and over again. Each of us have seen this movie stem to stern 12 times. That's nothing compared to editorial. So there's a fatigue from that for sure at a certain point, and you find your different ways to stay engaged and listening for different things, or I'm watching the guys in the background, or I'm doing other stuff to keep it fresh. But it doesn't, for me, I usually I can get to a point now where I can feel very proud of where it is, even though it's not where it's not perfect yet. I have learned that it doesn't help me a lot to torture myself through these screenings. Nobody wants to hear it afterwards. They don't care what you didn't do. So I've actually made a pretty conscious practice of trying to know what I can change and let go of what
Oh yeah.
just didn't
I
happen.
I still feel good about things I let go.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I know for a fact Brandon does let go. I can vouch. He's a professional Zen letter goer.
I guess it's that question. You've got the Michelin star chef who prepares the meal, and it's served to all the guests. And does he or she then have theirs put in front of them, and are they going to enjoy it to the same extent as everyone
Right.
else?
Right.
And it's
Right.
that phenomenon that you're sitting there with your popcorn, you've worked on this film, and no one else in the audience has seen it. Do you get the same excitement and celebration as everyone else? Or was like, I've seen this like 50 times.
Oh, I can because I can also, especially if I'm with other people,
Yeah.
I'm excited to feel their
Right.
energy, and it will also remind me of the first time I saw it. So it's kind of like going on. I always felt this with like Skywalker's a beautiful ranch where, I worked for years, and it's gorgeous, and you're like, and I love touring people through it and showing people the ranch, because I get to see it through their eyes, and I get to remember how it was the first time I saw it, just like anywhere you go, you go to a beautiful beach and you think you might be tired of it, but you can always see it from a different light.
That's a great explanation. Well,
Yeah.
I look forward to my visit.
Yes.
And Jess, a free invitation. And yeah, we look forward to the guided tour at Skywalker Ranch. Guys, thank you so much. I wish you both the best in both of your careers. We're excited to see what you work on in coming months. And both of you have a wonderful weekend ahead.
Thank you
Thank
so much.
you.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.